Well, hey guys, it's Single T here bringing you guys another lesson. Today, this is the fifth lie that we're going to be covering in this series of 6 lies in the Bible. And the one I'm going to be talking about today is when we claim to love God, but really we're lying and we actually love the world. And the first verse that I'm going to be going over is in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. It says here, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Now, it's important for us to understand what this doesn't mean, what this love of the world doesn't refer to. It doesn't refer to that we aren't to love the people in the world. We see in John chapter 3, verse 16, where it says, "For God so loved the world," meaning the people in the world. We also see that when Jesus was praying for his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was trialed and died on the cross for us, he was praying to God that his disciples be in the world, but not of the world. So we see is that this isn't referring to when John is saying, "Do not love the world," that it isn't about the people of the world that we aren't supposed to love, but rather the things in the world and the anti-God system that the prince of this world, the leader of this world, and the ruler, Satan, has established. And so that's what it's referring to, as well as the things in the world. We then see in the next verse, in verse 16, what the things of the world that we aren't supposed to love that John is referring to. It says here, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." That refers to many different things. The lust of the flesh, things such as gluttonness, sexual immorality, drunkenness, the lust of the eyes, wealth, greed, covetousness, and then the pride of life, meaning our ambitions, our achievements, boasting about those things, being prideful of those things. Now, some of those things in of themselves aren't bad. It's not bad for us to want to make money, to want to have a job and be able to provide for ourselves with an income. It's not bad for you guys as students to want to do well in school and try your hardest to get good grades, to be able to get into a good college, or if you're performing in theater or in athletics, to try your hardest to make varsity, to be the best that you can and do really well in those fields. However, the problem lies in when those things consume us, when they control us. When those things become our identity instead of Christ becoming our identity, then we can really be in trouble because, one, we're not being the image or representatives of Christ to the world that we are called to be. And two, in a way, we are telling the world, the lost, the people who don't know God, the people who aren't saved, that essentially we don't have anything better to offer to them because we're acting just like them in that we love the world just as much as they do. The other thing that's important for us to understand here when John is saying, "Do not love the world or the things of the world," is that it is impossible for us to love the world and the things of the world just as much as we love God. Listen to what Jesus said to his disciples in the famous Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, where it says, "No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." Now, mammon is a biblical term that just refers to wealth or money in this case. And so what Jesus is essentially saying here is that you can't serve 2 masters because you either love one and hate the other one. Meaning that loving the world and loving God, those two views, those two mindsets, they contradict one another. They clash with one another. Similar to how Paul talks about in Galatians, the flesh and the spirit warring against each other. Essentially, loving God and loving the world, it's like oil and water. They don't mix together. You can't have both. There's no gray area here. It's black and white. And so you're either on one side and you love the world, or you're on the other side and you love God. And so what does this mean for us? This doesn't mean that if we have the love in the world in us that we aren't saved. Matt talked about that a couple of lessons ago, reminding us that this book in 1 John was addressed to Christians. It was written to believers. So by loving the world, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose your salvation. But what it does remind us is that we're sinful as humans, and that there's going to be times where we're going to sin by putting the things of the world higher up in priority than God. And so this is an opportunity for us today and moving forward for you guys and for myself and for all of us as part of Refuel to examine our own lives and ask ourselves, are there things in this world that we love more than God, that we have on a higher pedestal or give more priority or more precedence to God? And if so, we ought to be asking ourselves, can we either remove those things from our lives or give them a lesser importance? And so that we can not only give God and Jesus a higher priority, but more importantly, make him the central focus of our lives around which everything else resolves. Thank you for tuning in today, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow for another Devo.